I'm Shari Bax, and I am the Vice President of Student Experience and Engagement here at the University of Central Missouri. My degrees are all actually in political science, with my bachelor's degree being from the University of the South, which is a small liberal arts college in Tennessee, and then my master's and my PhD being from the University of Tennessee. I came to UCM as a full-time faculty member, and from there became originally the Vice Provost of Student Experience and Engagement, and now the Vice President of Student Experience and Engagement, which is our Chief Student Affairs Officer.
I will go next. Hi, I'm Christina Kearns. I'm Assistant Director of Student Activities at the University of Central Missouri. I got my master's from the University of South Carolina in Student Affairs Administration. And since then, I've changed functional areas multiple times. So I started in international programs there. Then I did student activities work at the University of Idaho, then first year experience work at the University of Kansas, and have been here at the University of Central Missouri since a year ago, June.
I'll jump in next. My name is Rochelle Krausen, she, her, hers. I'm a new professional, so I actually just started in June 2019. And so just started at University of Central Missouri, and I'm in success advising. And I guess my undergrad and graduate school, I went to Eastern Illinois University with College Student Affairs program there.
My name is Josh Doak. I am currently at Kansas State University, the Polytechnic campus in Salina, Kansas. I recently just took this role about a month ago. I was previously at Baker University, and prior to that was in institutions in Indiana. So I got my undergraduate degree from Fort Hays State University and my master's degree from Ball State University in Muncie, Indiana, with their Student Affairs Administration out of their Excellence in Leadership program. Out of school, I worked at a community college, Vincennes University, the Jasper campus, so a satellite campus similar to what I'm here at Polytechnic, and worked in student activities at Baker. I worked in student activities, fraternity sorority life, as well as student government, student organizations. And then here at Polytechnic campus, I work in student government, auxiliary services with their Student Life Center, as well as student organizations and student activities and programming and intramurals.
Hi everyone, I'm Rachel. I am the complex coordinator at Emporia State University. So I work in residential life, complex coordinator and like a hall director, like the same thing. I did my undergrad here at Emporia State, and then I did my grad work at the University of Central Missouri in res life. And then I left professionally to go to North Dakota State for 2 years. And then I came back to Emporia State last fall, so 2019, I think that was. And then something also, so I have a live-in position, but something unique too is that I'm also a mom. So I have a kid living with me in the hall. So if you have any questions about that too, like, feel free to ask me.
That leaves me. Hi, everyone. My name is Katie DeBrittany. I am a second-year graduate student here at the University of Central Missouri. I am in the Master's of Science of College Student Personnel Administration. I am a graduate assistant as a residence hall director. I oversee 2 buildings. I am coming here from Northern Arizona University, where I got my undergrad, my BFA in studio art. And I also studied Spanish and art history while I was there. And I'm here to serve as your perspective as a graduate student here.
Awesome. Thank you for the lovely introductions. Attendees, if you have questions, please feel free to post them in the chat and I will read them out loud for you. So go ahead and take some time to do that. To start us off, though, while you guys post your questions into the chat, how did you get into student affairs? Whoever would like to go first.
I'll go first. I very distinctly remember one of the first days of my grad program and us going around the circle and answering this question. And it's so interesting because I think this is one field that you don't go into undergraduate assuming that that's what you're going to pursue and that's going to be your life's work. So some of us have very similar stories about our own personal involvement. Rachel, I actually went to Emporia State, and that's where my undergraduate experience was. I started out as an elementary education major, convinced since I was a kindergartner myself that I was going to teach kindergarten, and just never questioned it. And through my own involvement, specifically in student government, and having really strong mentors, I was like led down the path of student affairs, and they started dropping, pamphlets on my desk and things of that nature saying, there's other possibilities for you. So I ended up getting a communication degree knowing that I wanted to go into higher ed and and pursue a master's?
Yeah, so I started out, I'm a first generation college student. And so going to Fort Hays State, I was probably, it's typical that you may hear that story is I wanted to be a dentist, orthodontist, right? My family, I was what my parents thought I should be doing, right? The financial security of everything, being able to give back to your community and come back and kind of live that nice, amazing life. 2 years into my dentist degree in undergraduate in chemistry, I realized that was not my path whatsoever. I was not smart enough, not really want to dedicate my time to either focusing all on chemistry and pre-dental stuff or staying involved in doing my involvement through Sigma Chi on campus through orientation stuff. So I kind of had to make that decision of making that change. So I did a complete 180 to organizational leadership, which I lost so many college credits that I cannot transfer over, right? But I got into that area because somebody saw me struggling and saw that I did not know what I could do other than my focus was to be a dentist for so many years. I had no other options that I could think about. And then I had a mentor that was our fraternity sorority life advisor that said, hey, do you know that you can do, my job for a job, right? And for a career. It's not just a couple year thing. It can be a career. So he put me under his wing and kind of offered, a lot of internship opportunities across the country as an undergraduate member. And also he was my kind of help to get into Ball State and kind of those programs in too. So was able to just kind of find those mentors that I think all of us here today are hoping to offer to anyone else, that, it's kind of who and somebody that noticed that you were struggling and that I was having a hard time and said, here's another path, because I did not know any other paths than those thoughts of STEM. And that was my only direction, and that was not my passion.
Like Josh, I was also a first generation college student. I started out at a community college, and I never thought I was going to get an associate's degree, never thought I was going to get that bachelor's degree, and never thought I was going to get that master's. So just each stepping stone, I just continued to surprise myself and find those motivations, whether that internal, our motivations change throughout our journey. And that's a whole different conversation, I like to say. But I think my aha moment for student affairs higher education was really an internship I had my junior year of college, when I was sitting in a cubicle doing computer work, graphic design, communication type work with no interaction from anyone else. And I was like, oh my goodness, this is not what I want to do. I'm a people person. I just realized I love to help people. And then senior year, I had the opportunity to work with housing as a CARA resident assistant. Also worked for admissions and student activities, like yourself, just heavily involved in higher education. And you just see the change and that you can bring to someone else. So that person that walks in and has so many questions, is so curious, and then having them walk out feeling better about the questions they have answered, having confidence about being at the university, and just feeling better about themselves. I think in a way, that's what I like to do, is have anyone come to my office feel better about themselves and about their journey when they leave. So I think that was just my aha moment, and kind of my why for student affairs was my journey of, hey, I don't want to work in this cubicle setting forever, but also that love for helping people that I kind of fell into that senior year at college.
I'll jump in on that one if I may. So I came through my undergraduate experience being an art student that didn't really want to be an art student. It was just what I was good at. But a high school teacher before I even got to undergrad said, like, hey, you would make a good resident assistant. And I was like, what's that? And that was how I got involved in student affairs in the first place, was being a resident assistant in my hall. And so I was hired halfway through my sophomore year. And I found that I really loved it. I fell in love with the why behind my job. I didn't always like the what. I didn't like writing students up or, having uncomfortable conversations, but I really enjoyed why I was doing what I was doing. And I had this kind of, like how Rochelle put it, that aha moment of like, when I graduate as an art major, I'm gonna be real sad. Wait, what can I do this? Can I do this? So I walked into my hall director's office and said, hey, how do I get your job? And the rest was history from there, because that was when I started talking about graduate school.
Okay, well, I guess I can jump in. I am in this situation, I guess, the ultimate and late bloomer, because I was on campus working in higher ed for 14 years before I started down the path of student affairs, because I was a faculty member. And actually, the way I ended up getting pulled over into student affairs was the president of the university asked me to take a position. But the reason he asked me is because as a faculty member, I was already doing a lot of the different connections with student affairs. I was advising multiple student organizations. I was going on an alternative spring break trip with students. I was almost every semester in the halls doing a program that I was invited to do. I was offering leadership programs. I was going on retreats with students. And so I was already very involved in all of those different ways outside the classroom. And he was looking for a faculty member to take on the role to start building more bridges between the curricular and the extracurricular and co-curricular. And I guess I was the person that he decided could do that. And so I decided to take the position. That's 10 years ago now, and I absolutely love it and feel very, very thankful that he saw that in me and I got this opportunity.
Was that everyone? Okay. So our first question from the chat, how did you decide, or what general advice do you have for deciding what area of student affairs you wanted to work in?
Well, I can jump in on this one real fast. I didn't decide. It was kind of decided for me, and I get the great joy of doing a little bit of everything, because as the vice president of student experience and engagement, that's what you do, which is a perfect match for my personality, because I've never been really good at focusing on just one thing. So
I think that that's really the key to finding the functional area that is your fit, is to really recognize who you are and what kind of work you need to be doing to be happy. Because I think within student affairs, functional areas could be very, very different. And if you want your, if you like routine, and if you like A plus B equals C, student activities, for example, might not be the place for you, but there's other places within student affairs that you could have more routine. And so really taking advantage of figuring out who you are and the kind of work you want to do. But a lot of us have already used the word mentor. A lot of us had really strong guidance along the process, picking their brains about why they picked the area that they chose, and really positioning yourself as you go through your field, having opportunities that will let you extend past your functional areas. That's why I got the job at the University of Kansas, because I was able, through my student activities work, to express interest in other things. I was on the orientation committee. I was on the first year experience committee at Idaho. I led the Common Read at Idaho. And so all of those things positioned me to take on a role in first year experience, even though that wasn't necessarily the work that I'm doing. So if there's things that you're interested outside of what you're doing, take those opportunities. That's exactly why Dr. Bax is in the position that she was, because she is expressing interest and passion in exploring those things. And then the other thing that just is really key as you explore a degree in higher ed is taking advantage of intern opportunities the summer in between your first and second year, really taking the time to do internships within other offices outside of your assistantship, so that you can really narrow down the functional areas that you're interested in. And I am the firm believer, because I've done it, that you don't have to pick in grad and only stick with that. It's really about exploring and taking advantage of the opportunities that are presented to you.
Yeah, I would definitely, through my graduate experience, I'm not recommending it for everyone, right? So what we're talking about may work for us, may not work for you. I was at Ball State. I was 18 hours away from home. So really, school was my thing. That's all I had. I kind of wanted to dive into that. I said really no to nothing, right? So I had my excellence in leadership program. I also advised the FSL Greek week there on campus. I did the alternative spring breaks. I was a student SGA advisor for their treasury side of it. I didn't pick one area and say, this is where I'm going to go in. I try to dabble in a bunch of different things, academic support and student athletes, right? I challenge myself, especially in grad school. It's kind of that I tell students that, in college, it's your safety net. You get to do stuff. And really, if you if you fail, you're not really going to probably lose your job unless you're doing something that's really going to hurt others. But, you know, if you're not doing something great, they're just going to talk to you about it and they're going to advise you on it because we know that you're growing. So I just kind of stepped into things that even I felt uncomfortable, but maybe I would be interested in to kind of know what's going on. So that way, when you go to different job interviews and you may apply for something that may not be what you are exactly were in, you get to know a little bit about it, just enough to be dangerous, right? Enough to be able to talk about it and know what kind of going on. And so that's what I would share with that. And then just know that in grad school, yeah, your opportunity, whatever you pick out of grad school is not has to be your 20-year plan. You can jump around. I did student activities at a small college. I went into fraternity and sorority life. Then I'm overseeing a gym right now, and I had no gym experience prior to this, but because you have transferable skills, right? As leaders, we talk about transferable skills. If you're able to talk about whatever you're learning from other areas, about management, about those types of things, it's going to go across the board in student affairs. So don't really worry about that side of it. Is that about what you choose? Just learn from what you are working on to be able to apply to other areas, and you'll be able to jump into that. And I definitely love the internship side of it. I've had 2 graduate school student internships. Mackenzie was one from Central Missouri. And when they came and worked with me, I wanted to make sure that during their summer, they did not do anything that they would regularly do. So I've had a fraternity sorority life intern, and although I oversaw fraternity sorority life, we talked nothing about fraternity sorority life during her internship because I wanted her to get other experiences and do something outside of her comfort zone, because that's what you need to do during your grad program side of it. And then when you get in your jobs, yeah, you're going to be doing stuff for maybe a year or longer, but for your internships and over your summer, you get to do something for 3 months, and if you like it, great, you get to grow with it. If you don't like it, you just spend 3 months and you just got to pick out what you learn from it. And so that's what I would say recommending for your grad program right now is getting as much of those opportunities as possible, because then you don't have to have so many question marks when you're in a career choice and having to be like, oh, do I want to take this job? Am I going to like it? You've already known a little bit of taste of it.
Definitely what Josh said. So basically those internships, they either reaffirm that that's what you want to go into, or they're like, you get into an experience and you're like, never mind, this isn't the perfect fit for me, but you'd rather find it out in graduate school or internship if possible, instead of that post-graduation job. And hey, if it's that post-graduation job and you realize it's not the perfect fit, that's okay too. Like all 3 professionals said before me, it's really with that time and that experience and finding your fit, because there's so many different transferable skills, and that's really what you want to gain. You don't want to become a one-trick pony and just say, hey, this is what I did during undergrad, I did the same thing during graduate school, this is all I know. The more knowledge you have to bring to that future career, the more hireable candidate you will be. For example, so like I said, housing is undergrad. I realized that housing, I loved it, but it wasn't my favorite hours as a professional moving forward. I know, like, my mental health, that wasn't going to be my forever job. And that's kind of where I realized that. So in graduate school, when looking at different graduate assistantships, I looked at different areas that I hadn't experienced during undergrad. So a lot of times you kind of get to rank what you liked best, depending on the institution you apply to after interviewing for graduate assistantships. Do the ones that might scare you a little bit. So we have that comfort zone. Keep expanding that comfort zone, but don't step back into it. Keep expanding it because you want to grow. So I worked for Minority Affairs. That was my graduate assistantship, specifically with TRIO Student Support Services. So I identify as a first-generation student. I got to work with first-generation low-income students and students with disabilities. It was the most rewarding, but also toughest job I've ever done. But becoming an advisor later on, I gained so much transferable experience from that position. I also took on 3 internships. Only 1 was required. So I fit in 3 internships during grad school because I wanted to find my fit. So you have the opportunity to ask around, shadow, informational interviews. You have so many people right now in this chat. We're more than happy to talk to after if you just want to send us an email and say, can you tell me more what your day-to-day responsibilities look like? What's your favorite part of your job? What's your least favorite part of the job? We're more than happy to talk about that. So really asking those intentional questions. But my internships, career services, I got to teach a 1 credit hour class for students on academic probation. That was tough but rewarding. And then I also, oh my goodness, orientation, because that's something I didn't do during undergrad. So try all the things. When you're an undergrad now, ask for those informational interviews, ask for those shadowing. Hey, can I shadow you for an hour or for a day? They really, you've seen from this presentation and this day so far, higher education folks really do have big hearts and they want you to be able to find your best fit too.
I don't have anything else to add. I think they hit it really well.
Okie doke. Our next question in the chat is for Rachel. They say, I have always been nervous about having a family as a young professional in res life. How has that experience been, and how can you ease your family into the transition? I feel like I felt that it has been stigmatized. Has that been your experience?
Great. So my experience has been really easy, honestly. I'm a very outgoing person. And when I live where I work, I realize that I can't separate my two lives because I'm literally living where I work. So I blend it. So before COVID hit, my child was always going to programs. He was out and about. My staff would come say hi. Like, I have felt really supported by them, and they understand too, like, oh, Rachel has a child, like, I'm not going to send her late group me messages. It's something that can wait. So it's challenged my staff to be like, what's immediate, what can wait, which I think is a good lesson to learn. But like with COVID now, like, I mean, I feel really comfortable still. I feel very safe. My students have been really respectful. My experience has been pretty easy. I did definitely get kind of stigmatized. I announced when I was pregnant and people were like, what are you going to do? How are you going to respond to calls with the child? All those things. I job search because I moved out of state. So I job searched with a 2-month-old, and my family's my life. So I'm very transparent. So I mentioned that in my interview. And then I got questions. How are you going to have time for your students? How are you going to, separate your lives? And basically I said, like, I blend my life. I feel comfortable. I feel safe with my family when they're at daycare or at work. And so like my 8 to 5 or whenever I'm staff meeting, that's the time I spend with my students. Like, I devote that time with my students. So there's a lot of stuff to talk about on that, but I personally, it's been easy, it's been fun, and it's been really rewarding. Just the other day, the people above me were really loud, and I went up and I said, hey, like, you're loud, and my child's sleeping. And they're like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. They were so apologetic. And I was like, thank you. Like, it's just been so nice. But if you want to know more, feel free to reach out because I can talk about this forever.
Thank you for sharing. Our next question from the chat is, when looking for a grad program / assistantships, what did you look for in the program and school, and what did the process look like when you were applying?
Ooh, I would love to jump in on this one first, just because I recently went through the whole process. I was searching for graduate schools and graduate assistantships during the academic year 2018-2019. And I took a couple of different processes. I conducted what's called an independent search, wherein I just combed through universities and just did my own research. And I also went to a placement exchange, which was an in-person event where I got to interview and meet and shake hands with so many different universities and just a bunch of interviews rapid fire. So for your question, what did you look for in the program and school? For me, I was looking for a generalist program because I was generally interested in student affairs and I wanted to get a bit of a taste of everything. Like you'll find programs that are based around counseling, around specifically policy, specifically leadership. But I was interested in everything, just generally speaking. Things that I would look at while I was looking at the school is I was geographically flexible. So while I did focus on the Pacific Northwest, I was looking everywhere. I would look up to see what their programs were, if they had different emphases and focuses, because you will see programs that have like a big umbrella program, but like focuses in different things. I was looking at the curriculum. I think it's really important that as you're looking at schools and you're kind of scoping out a program, make sure you can see a course rotation on the school's website and see what classes you would be taking, and see where their focuses might be. I was focusing to see how rounded of an experience I was going to get at the school. Like if I noticed that there were a lot of classes on specifically law, I got the impression that, okay, this is a more administrative policy focused class. And so there was that. I was also looking at the university's mission statements and values, just kind of see where they stood. Because if you cannot back a school's mission, I would be hesitant to apply. The process for applying varied a little bit from school to school, but the general gist is that you're applying for the GA position and the program position. Now, you may not be looking for a graduate assistantship, and that's fine. But for the process, every school is going to have a different deadline. Some schools will be applying on a rolling basis. Some have deadlines that are coming up soon. But the general process was having your resume souped up, having a cover letter, having 3 to 5 employers lined up that can speak to your abilities, and having them either be available as references or providing reference letters, and then having those submitted by a certain time. Most schools will conduct 1 or 2 interviews, and then offers go out in the spring. And this is the typical general timeline that schools operate on. But yeah, like everyone else, I'd be happy to dive further into that if you have further questions on that process.
I want
Go
ahead, Rachel.
Okay. I love technology. Something to note too, I did an independent search and I wanted to stay close to Kansas, which is what I ended up at UCM. So something to note too, if you do an independent search, is that sometimes those first round interviews happen like weeks before placement exchanges. So that process for me took a lot of patience, and I'm a planner and I did not like that. So just something to note too, like that you're going in is like, have patience regardless of any process, but you may want like, do I get an on-campus interview right away? Like you won't know until usually after placement exchanges have happened. So just allow yourself. And if you don't have any patience, let's start working on it. And I can help you if you need help.
So I just sending in the group a link. This is what I used. Shameless plug, right, for NASPA institutions. I'm on their NASPA regional board for Kansas membership coordinator. So I got really involved in Fort Hays State with a NASPA institution. So I was directed to the site where you're able to really put down, the locations that you're wanting to look at. If you're looking at a private or public institution, large, medium, small, what types of degrees you're looking for, if you're looking for areas of focus. So it allowed me to really pinpoint down to a bunch. I didn't take the GRE, so that was a big one that really helped me to really decipher down, because really it's hard to, without getting into the independent groups and their websites, they really don't tell you that really up front sometimes on their website. So being able to kind of pinpoint, here's institutions that don't, that fit my requirement. And then I did my independent searches, because there are institutions everywhere that have higher education programs. So that's kind of what I utilize for. And then it allowed me to pinpoint that a little bit easier. Other than what has been kind of already been said, I looked for a place that would either pay for me to do the schooling through an assistantship or through scholarships. That was something my mentor told me, is that for your master's program, you should not have to pay for anything. You should find a program that will pay for you to be there so you can work. And I had no problems working for them to earn that pay, but for me not to have any more cost influence in it or taking out any loans, right? So either that means scholarships or that means grants or assistantships. But I was focusing on, especially from my focus, is not to have any more loans out of there than needed. That's the focus of mine. And then when you talk about prepping for it, utilize your career services, because for one, many of your career services individuals are student affairs professionals. So they had probably went through a similar session. So that's right up their wheelhouse to help you about the interviews, because they know what the interviews are, because that's their department most likely. So definitely utilize your on-campus resources if you're an undergraduate member trying to prep for those grad school ones. And that's even for first interviews and second interviews. Utilize them numerous times. As student affairs professionals, we're more than happy. We have open hearts, so we want to help you in other areas. If you're a grad student looking for job interviews, again, career services is excellent because, again, you're applying for jobs that they probably applied for out of their, out of their grad program. So utilizing those resources on campus, because they're not just free for the students to use. If you're a grad student, they're also free for you to use as well. So just don't forget about that, because I know that we preach for students to use the resources, but if we don't as our own professionals, then we're not really, practicing what we're preaching. So keep that in mind. That's kind of my resources.
Okay, we have a follow-up kind of that also relates to this question, and then we'll go to the other one that was posted. But it's, should we be looking for grad assistantships before applying to grad school, or should we apply to schools and then search after we're done?
So I'm trying to think of how I want to answer this question. The majority of the time, the search happens concurrently, but you can get into a master's program and then later find a graduate assistantship. It is most common for them to be concurrent, simultaneous processes, but they're not mutually exclusive either.
I think that's one thing that you need to be really aware of as you're looking at different programs, because I think depending on the program, that differs greatly. Both the programs that I had that were my finalists in my search, because I started in the NASPA list and did a lot of narrowing and was trying to decide between Bowling Green and South Carolina. And both of them have massive interview weekends that everyone that has been accepted then goes, and more people go to that interview weekend than will end up with assistantships or will end up going to school there. And people that are significantly better funded than I was at that point in my life, they all know each other because that's their third. They were at Texas A&M the previous weekend, and they were at Bowling Green the weekend before that. And so they've seen each other at multiple weekends. I kind of had to narrow it down between those two before I went on my interview weekend, because that was the realities of my finances at that time. But I knew that I would need to get one of those assistantships, and luckily did receive an assistantship to go to school there. Unfortunately, unlike Josh, I did not go to a program that had as great a package as even UCM does. And so I did have debt, but I was willing to take on that debt because I was really looking for a school that was in a different region of the country. I didn't have any debt coming out of undergrad, so I felt a little more comfortable taking on some grad school debt. And I wanted to have an experience that was connected to a high quality program in a different part of the country. And so knowing where you are and the realities of your situation while you're considering all those factors is key.
I think that was an important point that you brought up, Christina. It just